toxins will end up in your bones as well, but mainly like minerals and particularly electrolytes are stored here, which is why electrolyte balance and acid-base balance is really important. A big function of the skeletal system, which I don't know if that would be the first thing that I would mention. Probably the first thing I would think of with the skeletal system is support and protection. So like supportive, the bones are allowing you to stand up straight, sit up. I mean, these are just support. It's like your skeleton, right? And protection from blows to the head, protection from blows to your chest. If you have so it protects your heart, and it protects your internal organs, basically. And so support and protection are a big thing, along with this storage of minerals and electrolytes and this acid-base balance. They also act as levers for muscles to pull on, so movement is a big part of this. Although they don't actually move, they are being moved by the muscles. And then hemopoiesis. So hemo, anytime you hear this, it means blood. And then poiesis is going to talk about the formation of that. So hemopoiesis. Some of the shapes of the bones, like we have long bones like the femur and the humerus here. We have short bones like these little itty-bitty proximal or distal, distal phalanges of the number 5 phalanges, that kind of thing. We have flat bones in the skull. And there's other places where you find those. And then irregular bones are also found in the skull. You have like your sphenoid bone, for example. And then sutural bones. So in between these sutures, as these form, the babies, when they're born, they have those soft spots. They're called fontanelles. And when the fontanelles switch over from cartilage into bone, sometimes there's little bones that get formed in between sutures, which we call sutural bones. And that's one of the different types of joints, as well as a sutural articulation. But anyway, the wormian is another term. You may see this term, as well as sutural. It means the same thing. And then sesamoid, like the patella here. So the tissues that are found in bones, first of all, we have dense connective, and I keep wanting to say connective because I think that's pretty important, that's a connective tissue. Or periosteum is found on all of the non-articulating surfaces. So this area right here is articulating, this area right here is articulating with another bone. So anywhere else along here would be just all this area here, all this area over here. Those would all be non-articulating. So you can see the term and how it's like pointing to here. And it's kind of the outermost superficial covering. Then we have hyaline cartilage. That would be on the articular surfaces, shown in white or blue sometimes, gray other times, depending on the models, but those would be the articular cartilage. Then how the tissue is arranged in the bones. And the compact bone is deep to your dense connective tissue, so you have kind of outer surface of this is going to be like this area right in here. All that is going to be periosteum. But deep to that is your compact bone. And then deep to that is your spongy bone. And then there's another layer on the outside. So if you have a flat bone, it's going to be like a spongy bone sandwich. Long bones will have the red bone marrow and in the spongy bone, and the spongy bone is going to be on the ends. That's kind of the way it's arranged. And the middle part is going to be pretty much all compact bone. So tissues, the red bone marrow is located in the areas of the spongy bone on the ends of long bones, or in flat bones like your os coxa, your pelvic bone, and your skull would be another place where we can find these are flat bones. They're going to have basically a spongy bone sandwich, so it's going to be a layer of compact, then spongy bone, and another layer of compact. So yellow bone marrow with adipose tissue is found deep within long bones only. So that's going to be here in the medullary cavity and somewhat down here. So it runs along the shaft in the medullary cavity. There you go. Now, some of the ends of these bones and the parts of the bone, the end of the bone, end of a long bone, is called the epiphysis. So it is the ends here, and over here would be epiphysis as well. And there is an epiphyseal plate down here. This is an epiphyseal plate. Here is an epiphyseal plate. Here is an epiphyseal plate. So all of these in the green line is pointing to that. They're going to be an anchor between the epiphysis and diaphysis, and this is where a primary ossification center was located for endochondral ossification, which we'll talk about later. Diaphysis is the shaft, the length or shaft of the bone, and so all of this basically is the diaphysis. So cells of the osseous tissue, you have osteogenic, which means it's generating or making. So these are your immature bone cells. They're not a stem cell, but they're an immature bone cell that can become whatever kind of cell it wants to be. So osteogenic starts here, and then it becomes an osteoblast, which is going to blast out. It's going to spew the matrix of the bone tissue. So it deposits minerals, and they then isolate themselves into the osteocyte. This is the mature bone cell. And so osteo means bone and cyte means cell. So this is they have some stages of development that they have to go through before they get to this point where it's an osteocyte. But the osteoblast, they kind of spew out this little bit of matrix, and eventually they become trapped inside the matrix that they're building. But they make these little canaliculi, which are these little extensions coming out from the osteocyte that will allow them to pass materials from one cell to another, detect and communicate with cells outside of themselves. So here's a little osteocyte in the lacuna, and you can see the little canaliculi. And there's the osteocyte. And this space here, that is called the lacuna. And this, of course, is just matrix that they have laid down.